The thing about a desert moon is the light. Not the light inside. The outpost's interior lamps are standard-issue warm-spectrum fluorescents, the same as every Colonial Survey Division facility from here to the compact's outer rim. I mean the light outside the viewport, the light on the plane. This particular moon, Kethavar 07, has no atmosphere worth measuring except in the way that is my entire reason for being here. 20-month deployment, 1 researcher, 4 instrument arrays, and a column of daily telemetry pings filed to the home relay at Orvith Null every morning at 600 local. It is very quiet. I have been here 14 months. The plane outside is gray-white basalt, unweathered because there is nothing to weather it. The horizon line is sharp as a filed edge. When I wake in the morning and look through the viewport glass, nothing has moved. The sun comes up on the same angle every 41 hours. The dust haze on the eastern ridge is the same dust haze it was when I landed. There are no visitors because there is no reason for any. I kept meticulous records. That is what this posting is for. Column after column of atmospheric particulate data, spectrographic assay returns, pressure gradient readings, a comprehensive portrait of an essentially empty sky. The Colonial Survey Division would use it for terraforming viability assessments in 30 years or 60 or perhaps never, but the data would be there when they wanted it. In the meantime, I had my instruments, my reading archive, and my daily telemetry ping. The ping was automatic. At 600 each morning, the outpost comm array would compile a brief header, my identification, my biosignature reading, the outpost's position, and fire it to relay station Orvith Null, 112 light minutes away, who would log it as daily check-in and forward the day's operational parameters back to me. It was a welfare protocol. It confirmed I was alive and the outpost was functioning. I had not thought about it in months. It was simply a thing that happened. The way the sun came up and the instruments cycled, and the plane outside did not change. I was logging a spectrographic return at 14:23 on day 417 of my posting, when the comm array flagged an incoming signal. Not from Orvith Null, from an unfamiliar relay identifier. I set down my notation tablet and crossed to the array panel. The identifier was a long numeric string with a prefix structure I did not recognize, not Kethavar Colonial Standard, not compact military, not any commercial carrier I had on file. The transmission was addressed to me by name. To researcher Veth Orani Kalna, Outpost Kethavar 07 Survey Station by name, formal address structure. The sender listed as Terran Deep Grid Monitoring Station, Keth Sector 03. I did not know there was such a station. The message was brief. It identified itself as a welfare check confirmation under something called the Joint Welfare Monitoring Accord of 2449, Article 7, and informed me that a routine welfare dispatch had been authorized under the Accord's Article 7 isolation provision. A supply tender, designation Arrowhatch Null, was currently in corridor and would arrive at my pad in approximately 4 hours. The message asked me to confirm, at my convenience, that I was in good health and that no emergency condition existed at the station. I read it twice. I checked the sender again. Then I pulled up my comm log and looked at what had been going out every morning at 600. The outpost's comm array listed my daily ping under frequency Keth Primary 9, the standard Kethavar Colonial Survey Division check-in frequency. But there was a secondary notation I had never looked at. The relay housing that fed the array had a hairline fracture logged in the maintenance record from month 3 of my posting. Not enough to degrade transmission, the log noted, but sufficient to introduce a carrier frequency shift of approximately 3 kHz at the point of transmission. The note recommended monitoring. It had not been repaired. 3 kHz of drift. I looked up what that placed my daily ping on. Band Orvith Null 3. The Terran message referenced the Accord by number. I pulled my station's treaty archive, a standard inclusion for any Colonial Survey deployment, 47 agreements cross-referenced for operational compliance, and searched for the Accord number. It was not in the archive. The treaty archive did not know it existed. I sent a query to Null. The relay station's database returned a partial record, Joint Welfare Monitoring Accord of 2449, a bilateral welfare notification instrument between the Terran Deep Grid Monitoring Service and the Kethavar 7th Colonial Survey Bureau. Status on file: unresolved. The Kethavar 7th Colonial Survey Bureau had been reorganized and absorbed into the Colonial Survey Division 41 years ago. Whether the accord had been formally closed was listed as unknown. There was a note appended to the record: last external correspondence on accord matters, year 2473. No subsequent communication logged on either side. The Kethavar side had simply stopped corresponding. Not canceled, not closed, stopped. Earth had not. I sat with that for a while. The instruments hummed. The dust haze on the eastern ridge was the same as it always was. Somewhere in the corridor, a two-person Terran supply tender was making its way to my landing pad because of my daily check-in ping, drifting 3 kHz off its intended frequency, had landed on a band Earth had been monitoring for 77 years under an accord my own organization had forgotten it had ever signed. 77 days of welfare flags. 77 mornings I had filed my ping without knowing anyone outside my relay chain was reading it. And at some point Earth's grid had looked at the repeating biosignature, the isolated position marker, the absence of any record of visitor traffic, and decided the isolation provision of Article 7 applied, and dispatched the nearest available asset. The Arrowhatch Null touched down at 1847. 2 crew, a pilot and a supply tech, both Terran, both professional in the way that the crew of a routine resupply run are professional, efficient, not dramatic. The supply tech, whose name I did not catch, asked me once if I was in good health, and I said I was, and he noted it on a tablet, and that was the welfare check. Then they unloaded a supply pallet. 2 scrubber filters, ration supplements, a spare relay component, and at the bottom, wrapped in standard cargo cloth, a data module labeled, in plain type, Keth Sector Survey Addendum, years 2449-2526, general compatibility. I held it for a moment. 77 years of data from a band my organization had apparently been broadcasting on without knowing it, collated and formatted for my instruments. The pilot came down the ramp while I was still standing there. She was not talkative, but she looked at the gray-white plane, at the sharp horizon, at the motionless dust haze, and she said, matter-of-factly, "Long posting." "Yes," I said. "Accord flagged you at week 4, she said. "Isolation provision. We were the closest asset." She checked something on her own tablet. "Scrubber filters looked like they needed it. We pulled your consumption log off the ping header." I had not known my ping carried a consumption header. Apparently it did. Apparently the Accord's welfare check specification included a diagnostic packet I had never noticed. "I did not know anyone was listening," I said. She looked at me once, brief and without ceremony. "That's the usual thing they say," she said. She went back up the ramp. They departed at 2031. I watched the tender lift off through the viewport glass, a brief burn of engine light against the flat black sky, and then the plane was empty again, and the instruments were humming, and the dust haze on the eastern ridge had not moved. I filed the incident report that night. I noted the relay housing fracture, the 3 kHz drift, the frequency displacement onto band Null 3, the welfare monitoring accord, the dispatch, the resupply. I noted the data module. I noted that the accord had not been closed on either side, that my organization had simply stopped corresponding 41 years ago, and that Earth had apparently continued monitoring for 41 years after that without noting any lapse of obligation. At the end of the incident report, in the notes field, I wrote, "The band was not empty." Then I sat at the viewport for a while and looked at the plane. Nothing had moved. The sun was below the horizon and the stars were very clear in the airless sky. I had 6 months remaining on my posting, and I had scrubber filters that would last 8, and a 77-year survey addendum on my workbench, and a band on my comm panel that I had now pulled up and confirmed was still open on Earth's side. I did not update it to primary. I left it as a secondary notation, the way it had always been, and I set the comm panel to display its status each morning when the 600 ping went out. I told myself it was for operational completeness. That was true as far as it went. The plane was the same plane it had always been. The instruments hummed. The dust haze had not moved. Somewhere 112 light-minutes away, my relay station logged the night's end-of-shift notation and forwarded it to Orvith Null. And 3 kilohertz to the side of that signal, without my doing anything about it, my daily telemetry ping filed quietly onto a band that had been listening for 77 years. I let it continue,